Okay, welcome back. So I'll explain the title I picked for today because today's, I think, Perek Yomi is chapter 36, 35, 36, 37. And in chapter 36 is basically when God tells Yirmiyahu to publish. And in chapters 37 through 40, through 41, 42, or 44, unless we'll see how depressed Yirmiyahu end of his career is and why he wishes he could perish. That was my joke in the title. Why God wants Yirmiyahu to publish and why Yirmiyahu wants to perish. So I want to begin to share proving that he wants to perish, and then we'll go back and see what happened in chapter 36, why God tells him to publish. We talked about that a little bit last week, and then we'll try to understand what we talked about last week of why what's so sad, what's so sort of depressing about what brought down the first temple and the argument among different rabbis about what the right thing to do was and who they should have listened to. And Moshe's question, how are the people supposed to know who to listen to? We talked about it briefly at the end of last week. Sure, I'll do it more detailed today. So let me share my screen and just open up a good old Tanakh. Okay, we don't need this one. We need, I'll use an English Hebrew Tanakh, be easier to read from. And actually, before I do that, just stop the share for 1 second. I want to review the structure of the book that we talked about before. That's going to be here. Here we go. We have, remember the first 20 chapters were pretty much without date stamps we talked about. The first chapter was this Hakdashah, being appointed a Navi. And then we have a quick reference, here's what God had said in the time of Yoshiel, but then he goes on and on. And then from chapters 2 through 20, basically, there's a lot of nevuot, but that lot of subunits, lots of subunits, but no headers, no mention who the king was and when it was given. When you study them, you can prove pretty much when they were given. Like we proved that chapter 7 must have been the same time as the fourth year, must be exactly the same as chapter 26, and it's the fourth year of Yehoiakim. But again, it doesn't say that in chapter 7. You can only work it out working backwards. And you can see chapter 11 was when they make the Brit, it's been the 18th year of Yoshiel. But again, they're without titles. And then chapter 20, the end of chapter 20, I want to leave alone now. We will see why, because that's going to end a unit. The end of chapter 20 is going to close up chapter 1. We'll see why in a minute. Then we'll have from chapters 21 through 29, which we talked about last week, the core of it. We'll do more of them again today. That is all the political stuff, which my claim was had to be burnt. It had to be couldn't be published in public until after the temple was destroyed, and therefore it was in Geniza. It was kept basically clandestinely and only put together, added to the book after the Khurban. And then, of course, after the bad stuff's over, we have the vote of Nachama. And then the question is going to be, which is chapters 30 to 34, 35 and 36 are going to lead to, 36 will be our topic today. We explain how the book came about, and then we're going to get to how chapters 37 to 40 become an appendix of how the destruction happened. And then Vot Amin would be next week. That'd be the final unit of Menachem. So I want to show you why chapter 20 closes chapter 1. So just real quick, where are we? I'll read one line in chapter 1, which is famous because it's Haftarah from the 3 weeks. Jeremiah chapter 1. Remember, we have the time period of Yirmiyahu, the 3 kings, etc. And the first thing God tells Yirmiyahu, before you were born, I came to know you, I appointed you before you were born in the beten, in the womb. From mother's stomach, etc. Before you went from your mother's womb, I set you aside as a prophet for the nations. I gave you a job. And they say, I don't know how to be a prophet. I'm just in training. And God says, I'll show you, you're able to, you're basically gives him smicha. He thinks you're in training and says, no, you're ready to work, but you have to give a message and it's going to be harsh. Okay. And again, you'll tell them they're not going to listen to you, but you have to tell them anyhow. Okay. Now, remember they'll fight you and they'll listen to you, but there's hope. Now, in chapter 20, which is going to end this unit, the very last section is really, really sad, but you can't miss how it matches. Okay? two things. One thing he says is, actually, I'll go back to Pashkur in a minute. I'll just read the end and then we'll go back to one before this. He says as follows. The last Parshiah, there's a Samech again. Orur hayom asher yuladati bo. This is like a little ending, like a poem at the end. He curses the day he was born. Yom asher yulatani imi yabaruch. That's the day that my mother gave birth to me should not be blessed. Right? Worse than that. Cursed be the man, right, who announced the news to my father, hey, you had a baby boy. I guess back then they didn't let the fathers in the birthing room either. That thing. And you had a baby boy. I'll just share with you a story. All my children were born in Shari Tzedek Hospital, but many, many years ago. I'm old, but over 30 years ago. But the fathers were not allowed in the room with the mothers. But there's a waiting room. In the waiting room, there are all these letters, and basically one of them said, if it's a girl, don't commit suicide. There's people praying for boy, because but basically there's all these words that, if you're having a girl, it shouldn't be, don't take it so bad. So it was just a bad example, but just a memory I have from a long time ago. Anyway, but he's saying the bad news that you had a baby boy, then he shouldn't be happy. Okay. Now that person, right, should be cursed, etc. You should basically it's really angry now. And what's he angry at? Asher lo motatani mirachem. Because I should have been killed from my mother's womb. Remember the word rechem we have in the beginning? Batili imi kibri, my mother's womb should have been my burial site. V'rachma harat olam. Right? He wishes he was never born. Okay. Lama ze mirachem yatzati. Doesn't that match perfectly the opening line? Before you fed from your mother's womb, I came to know you. Is why did I leave my mother's womb? Just to see all this trouble, and I'm finishing my days in shame. See the busha? Now makes sense. My title. Yirmiyahu wants to perish. Why does he hate his job? It's not he doesn't mind serving God. Everyone hates him, and they're going to blame the Khurban on him. And he's this, I like to call him the left-wing rabbi, who really means well, but no one wants to hear what he has to say, and they hate him and they blame everything on him because no one wants to listen to him. Now that, don't get me wrong, that doesn't mean in every, as Yirmiyahu we talked about last week, is telling the people to give in to the Babylonians, to put a white flag and don't fight. That doesn't mean that's always God's message. It's God's message for that generation. But you can just use the analogy to appreciate how bad he feels then based on how people would react to something like that today. Now, I want to quickly go to chapter 36. Actually, I want to show you why 35 and 36 go together. Remember, 33 and 34 is when God tells him to buy real estate, even though things are bad, the market's down, the city's under siege. It's still, buy real estate even though it's low. And remember, Yirmiyahu says it's a haftarah but probably Parshat Bahar. It's the haftarah. So you have one day people buy real estate again in Yerushalayim, even though right now the city's under siege. That's a classic Nevuah of Nechama. Now, that's 33 and 34. In 35, you have something really strange. This is something that happened again out of order. Something from the time of Yehoiakim. God tells Yirmiyahu, right, to go to the house of the Rechavim and give this message and tell them, bring them to the temple and give them wine to drink. Again, this is just a show because God knows what's going to happen. And so he takes Yasnel ben Yirmiyahu, he brings this guy from the Rechavim, okay, and he brings him to God's house, to Lishkav, this guy, Hanan ben Gedalia, etc., okay, and to the ministers, etc. He puts wine in front of them, and guess what? Listen what they say. V'amru lo nishte yain, ki Yonatan ben Rechav Avinu tziva alenu lemor lo tishtu yain atem u'vnechem ad olam, u'bait lo tivnu, v'zera lo tizra'u, v'cherem lo tita'u, lo yeh lachem ki ba'alim teshvu kol mechem leman tichyu yomim rabim al pnei adama. Yonatan ben Rechav, the Alta Zedi, the great-great-grandfather, started a family minhag as follows. To do what? No wine, basically a nazir. Don't own that, don't farm land, etc. Basically, be nomadic. don't plant vineyards, etc. And don't be a farmer. Basically, be a nomadic person, live in tents, basically be an outsider. Some people say this like early Christianity, early Dead Sea, that kind of idea. Now, Yirmiyahu is bringing him in to show that at least these people listen to the Masorah. He says, everyone heard Yonatan saying we're not going to drink wine, etc., and do that. And now when Nebuchadnezzar is bringing siege on the city, they have to come to the city for safety. But Yirmiyahu says, go tell the people of Yehuda, Halot tichu musar lishmo devarinu Hashem. Okay, who come with Divrei Yonatan ben Rechav, etc. He says, learn Musar from how the family of Yonatan ben Rechav kept their family tradition, and you guys aren't. And he's using Yonatan ben Rechav as an example of people keeping to tradition. Now, does anyone know who this Yonatan ben Rechav is and where he came from, and why he made this promise? Why does he quote Yonatan ben Rechav? Where did he come from? Okay, I guess you guys don't know your Sefer Melachim. Yeah, it's Sefer Melachim.
Okay, that's it.
Yeah, let me.
With his rebellion.
Say again. Who's rebellion?
Yehu.
Yeah. So in a nutshell, God told Eliyahu to make a new Middle East. Eliyahu's goal was to keep Achav king, but get rid of Yizebel, because Yizebel was bringing all the idol worship. Eliyahu was hoping if he would stop the rain and prove the Baal it's not a god, that Hashem hu Elohim, everyone would dump Yizebel and follow God. And he stops the rain, etc., does all these miracles to stop the rain and to prove that Hashem hu Elohim, and it doesn't work. Remember? Yizebel's still out to get him. The people don't join him. The people call him, you're the enemy. You're using your superpowers to hurt us. They're angry with Eliyahu. Now, God tells Eliyahu, I'm going to show you how to make a new Middle East. He gives Eliyahu 3 jobs. You need a new chief rabbi to replace you. That'll be Elisha. You need a regime change in Syria. That'll be Hazael, the king of Aram, instead of Ben-Hadad. Yeah. You need a regime change in Israel. You need to change the Israeli government. That's going to be Yehu instead of the house of Achav. You need a new king. I call that shaping the new Middle East. It'll take a while. It'll take a couple of decades, and by the time that's over, we'll see it'll get rid of all the idol worship. Because who's going to do it? Yehu. It'll be the hard way. Now, Yehu is a general. Who's the Jews are fighting up in basically in Transjordan, basically in Golan or in Transjordan. They're fighting the Aram, the Arameans or the Syrians, and it's a war over territorial expansion. It's not a war over. There's no existential threat to Israel at the time. Achav Achav's sons at the time are trying to expand their borders back to what it used to have, getting the areas of Transjordan and the Golan. It's a battle the king wants, and Yehuda's going with him. I'm sorry, but the people aren't so crazy about it. In the middle of the war, Elisha sent one of his students, who Chazal says Yonah, and they make him. They go to the tent of Yehu, the general, anoint him, and he runs away. And he tells him, "You're king, and your job as king is to get rid of the house of Achav." And then he runs away. The soldiers ask their general, "Hey, what did he say?" And he's reluctant. He tells them what he said because it's seditious. And all of a sudden, all the soldiers are supporting Yehu. And then Yehu marches on the Shomron. Basically, he goes to Emek Yisrael. He goes to tell Yisrael where Achav had taken that field from Navot. And that's where Summer Palace is. And there Achaziel, his son, is there, the king, etc. And what happens? Or Yoram, I'm sorry. And Achaziel, the king of Judah, and Yoram, the king of Israel. Either way, Yehu comes. All the soldiers join him. He does a coup d'etat and gets rid of the whole house of Achav. And everything, and wipes out Yizebel, etc. Now, I'm going to read you one pasuk from there, which is key to this story here, which we'll see. I think it would be one of the reasons why Yirmiyahu is bringing this idea in. Where are we? We don't need this. We need a Chumash. We need the Book of Kings. I think it's chapter probably 11 or 12. Let me take a look. Kings, chapter 2 Kings. We'll start with chapter 10, I think. Sefer. Here we go. Yeah, in chapter 10. Okay, what happens? So Yehu has this whole Achav has 70 sons, and Yehu gets rid of all of them. Basically, they cut off their heads and they, what do you call it? They bring them to basically, and Yehu is able to get the people to do it on their own. Okay. Basically, they turn over Achav's son. Okay. Kedue, for he says, Kiloi po davar me'Hashem arza asher diber Hashem bi'ad Achav, etc. Vayach Yehu, listen carefully. Vayach Yehu et kol nisharim lebeit Achav b'Yisrael. Achav wiped out the whole house. Yehu wiped out the whole house of Achav. He's a new king now in Emek Israel. All the important people, this whole government, his whole bureaucracy, everyone, he wiped them out. Nothing was left over. Then he went to Shomron, wiped it out as well. And then Yoav finds the royal family of Achaziel, the king of Yehuda, after wiping out Yoram and Achav's family, and then he wipes them out as well. Okay. Then listen carefully. Pasuk Tevav. Vayelech misham. He meets Yonadav ben Rechav in the middle of his bloodbath, wiping out all the Shomron. Hey, are you with me, Yonadav ben Rechav? And Yonadav tells him, I'm with you. Yesh v'yesh, give me your hand. He gives him his hand, and Yehu takes him onto his chariot, says, come, I want to watch you do my bloodbath. Okay? Come with me, he says, Ured kinati l'Hashem be'rikboto berichbo. I want you to see my zealousness in fulfilling the word of God. And he puts upon his chariot. He goes to Shomron. He wipes out everything left over to Achav and Shomron. Nothing left over at all. And then Yehu takes all the Nevei Baal and then burns them down in the, in their church, etc. It's like a really gory story. And basically, they take all of the Baal and they get rid of them as well. What's important for our story is Yonadav ben Rechav is a witness to the bloodbath that Yehu does, following the commandment of God to wipe out the house of Achav and Izebel and everything that goes with it. What was Yehu supposed to do afterwards? He was supposed to make things better. What happened instead? Yehu has a new regime, and bottom line, it's not much better than beforehand. It was Yehu was appointed to become king and make things better, but he didn't go back and they did a better job than Achav did. We got rid of Baal and Asherah, but we still weren't serving God properly. So what Yonadav ben Rechav, who was with Yehu in the beginning, saw what happened, and basically what decision did he make? He's had it with sovereignty. You with me? Yeah. What's Yonadav ben Rechav saying? There's just cities are bad, wine is bad, government is bad. It's basically don't be involved in politics. Don't be involved in day-to-day life. Just be what's it called? Not a nazir. Be a the people in those monasteries.
Hermit?
What are they called? Hermit. What's a nazir? The people in monasteries.
A monk.
Be like a monk kind of thing. Idea. Just cut yourself off from everything. But cut yourself off from all the mazeh, and just it's a classic religious reaction to people fed up with politics. Now, Judaism doesn't hold by that. We hold. It's dangerous having a country and running it, but if you do it right, you can sanctify God. But there's a good chance of doing it bad. Yonadav ben Rechav gives up. But it's interesting, Yonadav ben Rechav, who's the example of keeping a tradition from their father, began his tradition because he saw the misuse of government power and the misuse of Yehu was appointed by God to wipe out the house of Achav, but the purpose was to make things better. But they do the bloodbath in the name of God, but they don't make things any better. Not much better. And therefore he gets upset, and then that becomes almost 200 years afterwards, his children are still following their family minhag. Anyway, that was a little side point in Yirmiyahu. Now let's get to chapter 36, when God tells Yirmiyahu to publish. In chapter 36, he says as follows. But again, this is the background to chapter 36. Chapter 35. Where are we? Yirmiyahu chapter 36. Where are we? Here we go. Yirmiyahu. The first thing God tells Yirmiyahu to do is take everything that he's written before. We talked about this last week. Everything from the again, it's the fourth year of Eliakim again. That's the same year that Yonah ben Rechav came. Tells him, publish everything into a Megillat Sefer. Remember, everything from the beginning of your career from the 13th of Yoshiyahu until the 4th year of Yehoiakim, write it all down, including the last nevuah about giving into the Babylonians. And if not, they'll come and destroy you, and the danger of not giving in, they might destroy the temple as well. They write it all down. They read it in a fast day in the temple, and then they're caught. They're charged with treason. They tell Baruch ben Neri, who's reading the book, tell him go hide. And Yirmiyahu's in hiding already anyhow. And basically at the very end, he says about Yehoiakim, God tells Yirmiyahu about Yehoiakim, here's the word of God. You burnt this book, this Megillah, saying, why did you write in it? The Babylonians are going to come and take over the land. That's why he burns the book, because it's saying, don't fight the Babylonians. And therefore, Yehoiakim's not going to have any descendant. He's going to be finished. Now, then what happens? Yirmiyahu took another Megillah, gave it to Baruch ben Neri, the Sefer. He wrote everything back in this new publication, which the king burnt, and added many things to it. What I tried to claim last week was that there's flammable Yirmiyahu and non-flammable. Yirmiyahu has lots of devote that are not political, about fixing your society and kind and Shabbat and idol worship and things like that. That can be read. That doesn't have to be burnt. But anything that was political, saying anything giving into the Babylonians, anything about ranting on how bad the king is, and about basically not fighting and telling the soldiers not to fight, that can't be kept. That can't be published, and therefore everything from chapter 21 through 29 is all politically charged. They all have dates in the beginning from all different time periods, and they're all organized and presented from chapters 21 through 29. After that, then we have Note of the Chama 31 through 34, and then I call this Sipur Mizgeret here at the end. Now, I'll summarize what we said last week. What causes the false prophets, that we start with the story of Hananiah ben Azor from Givon, this other who have that fight about breaking, that God's breaking the yoke of Bavel, but it'd be in 2 years, and not in 70 years, which is happening already in the reign of Tzidkiel. What we see from that fight is, once Yirmiyahu says, give it to the Babylonians, he's saying that in the name of God. That's in the 4th year of Yehoiakim. And then he puts the yokes on him, etc., and gives all those messages, don't rebel. He's basically weakening the army. And therefore, if his nevuah is not true, he's an enemy of the state, because if the nation's interest is to fight the Babylonians, and that'll help us survive and get them out of here, I need every soldier involved. And I don't need anyone telling our allies also not to fight the Babylonians. And he's sending letters to all the emissaries, remember, to the other countries, put yourself in the yoke of Bavel. If the whole government's policy of Yehoiakim, and then later Tzidkiel, once he rebels, is that we can take on the Babylonians, and we have to fight them, and basically for the sake of the Middle East, get rid of them, it requires a joint effort, everyone putting their biggest efforts into it. If there's a rabbi going around telling the people, don't fight, put up a white flag, and the government position is we have to fight, we need every soldier, then Yirmiyahu becomes a threat to the state's security. That's why they want to kill him. Remember, predicting temple will be destroyed, that was the excuse, not the real reason. That's what I tried to explain last time. Now, because it's so politically charged what he's saying, it's so unheard of, but because Yirmiyahu was such a popular prophet beforehand, before the 4th year of Yehoiakim, and he was behind Yoshiel's great revolt, etc., not revolt, his reform, he has credibility. So how do you stop his credibility? I need all the other rabbis, all the other Nevi'im, who are also God's Nevi'im, and his colleagues, they have a conspiracy theory that Yirmiyahu is being paid by the Babylonians. He's not really a prophet of God. And Yirmiyahu is making it up for his own political reasons, or because he's being paid by the Babylonians. We'll see it in a minute. And therefore, to save the people, they say in God's name that God told us the exact opposite. Now, they know they're lying, but they're sure that they're right. And it's okay to lie because they think they're saving the country by lying. That's why Yirmiyahu is so upset by the Nevi'ei Sheker. Now, they're taking a risk that maybe because they think Yirmiyahu is wrong. Yirmiyahu might be right, but they're so sure he's wrong that it's okay to lie in the name of God and say God told us exactly the opposite. And that's the summary we explained last week. why there's such tension between Yirmiyahu and the other false prophets. Why he's asking God, get rid of them. Don't let them talk. Don't let them survive. That was he mentions that also in the end of chapter 20, right before he says he wishes he was dead. It's right after he says he wishes they were dead as well. Because they're causing the people they're going to cause the people to go against the Babylonians and they're all going to lose. Now, what's going to happen in the end, you would think that once, remember Hanani ben Azor dies, you would think they would listen. No, they don't. They blame Yirmiyahu, you put a spell on the guy. You would think after, remember Tzidkiel rebels in the 5th year? We'll go back to that when we get to Yechezkel. They start the rebellion, and that fails. And the Babylonians come and take over the city. You would think they would listen to Yirmiyahu then. So we're going to see what happens. To the very end, they're going to blame Yirmiyahu for the Khurban. So I want to read today. You know the story of Tzum Gedaliah pretty much. Remember, there's that what happens? We did this briefly last week, I think. Is that after the Khurban, no, we didn't do this last week, but after the Khurban, the Babylonians take over the city, the temple is destroyed, but we exile most of the people. The poor people he can leave behind to be farmers and workers, etc. And he puts Gedaliah in charge. Remember, Gedaliah is a grandson of Shaphan. Shaphan was pro Yirmiyahu. Remember, Gedaliah ben Achikam ben Shaphan. So anyone pro Yirmiyahu can remain, and that's why people are so worried about him. Now, Gedaliah is in charge. Yirmiyahu goes to Gedaliah. They give him a choice. And what does Gedaliah promise everybody? You stay with me, and you'll be protected. Now, what's the danger? The danger is that the Babylonians might come again and wipe them out. As long as we're subservient to the Babylonians, they'll be okay. Now, watch what happens in this story here. The story of the Khurban, we're not going to have to read it. We're going to read the story, what happens in chapter 39. A second, 39 after the Khurban should be chapter 39. Yeah. Shanchi of Tzidkiel. Actually, maybe just one thing in chapter 37, which is so sad. This is what happens. Listen, Tzidkiel has a sort of a split personality because Tzidkiel understands Yirmiyahu, but he's taken over by his advisors. But this is what happens here. Here, Tzidkiel becomes king, remember? And he rebels against, in the 5th year, he starts his rebellion against Nebuchadnezzar. Disney and Yirmiyahu. Okay, now listen. Basically, the king Tzidkiel sends a messenger to Yirmiyahu as follows. We didn't do this last week, correct? I'm not sure we didn't. Pray to God. Okay. In the meantime, Yirmiyahu is going back and forth because he's a free man now because Tzidkiel is king. Okay. And he wasn't in jail anymore. Okay. And Pharaoh's army left Egypt to help, but to fight the Kasdim, which was great news, which shows the rebellion was making sense. The Kasdim, who are putting a siege on Jerusalem, hear the news and they leave, and they stop the siege, and that's great news, and there's great hope. Maybe the worst is over. Okay. Okay. Then God tells Yirmiyahu, go tell the king. Okay. You think Chel Paro is leaving? It's going to help you. They're going to go back to the land. It's not going to help you. Okay. And he says, this is Kol Mar Hashem. Al tashu nafshotechem lemor haloch yachum yaleinu hakasdim ki lo yalechu. Don't get your hopes up too high. Remember, the Babylonians had a siege and they left. Oh, the worst is over. We're all coming back now, just like the false prophet said. Okay. Then he says, no, nothing's going to help. Okay. And then Yirmiyahu is going now, leaving Yerushalayim now to see his family. He's in Shar Binyamin, and guess what happens? Some guy watching, some guard at the gate this guy sees him, catches Yirmiyahu, charges of being Elakazim Atanofel. Okay. Hey, you're going to the enemy. Remember, they don't trust him. Okay. I'm not going to I'm not working for the enemy. I'm not going to cheat on you guys. I'm not going to the other team. And then I'm not going to the Babylonians. Okay, but they didn't listen. They took Yirmiyahu and they put him in jail. See, political arrest. Okay, this has nothing changed. Like just saying about Yirmiyahu, all the ministers of the government start beating him up. Okay, and they put him in jail. Okay, in Beit Yonatan Sefer. Okay. And then he's in this pit, okay, and Yirmiyahu there for a long time, okay. Then finally, Tzidkiel takes him out of jail. Got it? This story is just awesome, okay. He's in jail. The king, who's worried about Yirmiyahu, takes him out of jail and brings him to the court to ask him some questions. Okay? Secretly, Tzidkiyahu asked Yirmiyahu this question: Hayesh davar meit Hashem. Maybe there's some good news from God. Here's the news from God. You're going to fall into the hands of the Babylonians. Bad news. Okay. He tells the king, why did you put me in this lousy jail? Okay. And why, remember, so far all my predictions came true. Okay. And how about all the Nevi'im who said before the Babylonians aren't going to come? Okay. And then Yirmiyahu prays to him, listen, do me a favor. Don't put me anymore in this jail. Put me in a better jail. So it basically puts him now in the jail. He puts him in house arrest, under house arrest. So Melech Tzidkiyahu takes Yirmiyahu and puts him in Chatzar Matara. He gives him enough food for the day, kikar lechem for the day, from his bakery until there was no bread left under the siege. And Yirmiyahu is arrested until the Khurban happens. He's in Chatzar Matara under house arrest. Then we saw in chapter 21. He goes and prays. 1 second, where are we? Chapter 38. Okay. Here's they want to kill the guy again. Again, they want to kill Yirmiyahu for making these prophecies. He's giving again. Yirmiyahu's giving the same prophecy, and the what do you call it? Shfati ben Matan and Gedab ben Pachchor. All these people hear Yirmiyahu talking again from Chatzar Matara. If anyone's staying in the city is going to die, anyone going to the Kasdim is going to live. He's saying this under house arrest. He's still talking, I guess, out the window. And the Sarim take him again and put him in what do you call it? This is what they say. Remember I told you why Yirmiyahu wants to perish? They want him to perish. He says, the minister and government said, kill this guy. Okay? He's weakening the soldiers. Everything I just told you, it's right here. That's why they hate the guy, because he's ruining army morale. Okay? Saying these things. Okay? He's what they call nowadays kaplanistim. You know what those are in Israel? Those are the people demonstrating against the government, wanting to give in, etc. And they're ruining the country. Put him, kill the guy. Okay. Then Tzidkiyahu says, listen, do what you want with him. Can't help him. So they throw him into the deep pit, and then finally someone comes to save him. He's about to die in this pit, and then Eved Melech Kushi comes to save him. Okay. Anyway, that's the whole story about him getting saved. And then finally, okay, here. One more story in chapter 38. Vayshach melech Tzidkiyahu vayikach Yirmiyahu navi elav al mavah shlishi asher beveit Hashem v'yamar melech Yirmiyahu shoel ani otcha davar al teched menu davar. Again, the king asked him, tell me the truth, Yirmiyahu. What's going to be? Okay. V'yamar Yirmiyahu Tzidkiyahu ki agid lecha halo hamayt tamitein. If I tell you the truth, you're going to kill me. Ki atzach lo tishma. If I give you advice, you're not going to listen to me. Why should I tell you the bad news? You're not going to listen to me anyhow. Okay. Everyone wants the king, the Navi, to say good things. Vayshava melech Tzidkiyahu Yirmiyahu b'sefer lemor. Tzidkiyahu swears to him, Chai Hashem asher sadanu et hanefesh hazot imam bitach. I'm not going to kill you. Just tell me the truth. I'm not going to give you to your enemies. I won't let them kill you. I'll protect you now. Just tell me the truth. Okay? V'yomer Yirmiyahu Tzidkiyahu kol mar Hashem el yitzvot el Yisrael im yotzo yitzei el sarim melech Bavel b'cheta nefshecha. Put up a white flag to the Babylonians, you can stay alive. And you can save this city. Put up a white flag like Yoyachin did. Stop the rebellion, and you can stay alive. Just give in to the Babylonians, and the city won't be burnt. You can save your life. You can save the temple. If you don't give in to the Babylonian ministers, if you don't submit your surrender to them, the city is going to be burnt. Okay? Be burnt down, and you're not going to get away. Okay. Then Tzidkiyahu says to Yirmiyahu as follows: if I give up myself, if I surrender to the Babylonians, the Jews already surrendered to the Babylonians, going to come and kill me. And Yirmiyahu said, don't worry, they won't. Okay, listen to the voice of God, which I'm telling you, and you can stay alive. and if not, you're finished again. Okay. Okay. And then okay, he goes on and on about what's going to happen to them. Okay. Now listen, this is the cutest part at the end. I mean, it's sad. Yirmiyahu. Ish al yedam b'dvarim ha'elash lo tamut. Okay, he got the worst news he could hear, but he tells Yirmiyahu, "Don't you dare tell anybody I came to ask your advice, and then I won't kill you. I promise not to kill you on the condition you don't say you came to visit." Okay, and now, how about if they ask you what was your conversation about? Everyone knows that Tzidkiyahu called Yirmiyahu in. If the rumors gets out that if my ministers, remember. The ministers are controlling the prime minister here. The king. His ministers won't let him they won't let him listen to Yirmiyahu. Says, if the ministers ask you, what did you guys talk about? If they ask you, tell us what the king asked you about, and don't hide from us, and we won't kill you. They really want to know. His ministers don't trust the king. You follow? The king's own ministers are worried that he's siding with Yirmiyahu. And he just talked to Yirmiyahu. So he tells Yirmiyahu, if my ministers come and ask you, what did we talk about? Make up this following story. Tell them that the king wasn't coming to get my political advice. Rather, I was going to the king to ask for a better jail, a better jail to stay in. It was a personal matter, not a national matter. Now you understand my title? Yirmiyahu wants to perish. Everyone wants him dead. And even the king, everyone, and he's torn between, but everyone doesn't trust him. Okay? Okay. But Yirmiyahu, everyone, they just had this meeting. All the Sarim come to Yirmiyahu and say, hey, what was, and they asked him, tell us, what did the king say? Don't lie. Okay? And then Yirmiyahu uses his cover story, and they put him again back in his house arrest in Chatzar Matara until Yerushalayim was taken over, and then the Babylonians set him free and go on. Anyway, that's one part of the story. Chapter 39 is the story of the Khurban. So we'll leave that story alone. Okay. And Zebran goes and saves, what do you call it? Yirmiyahu. And now what happens when Gedaliah is put in charge? Where are we? We're in chapter 40 now. Okay. Okay, so Yirmiyahu now goes to Gedaliah. We can skip this. He gives him a right to go where he wants. Okay, now listen to this. In chapter 40, verse 7. There's a detail we learn about here, which is amazing. Listen carefully. After the temple is destroyed and the city is wiped out, and Gedaliah is now in charge of Mitzvah. Vayishmu kol sarei hachayalim asher basadeh hema v'anashem ki ifkid melech Bavel et Gedaliah ben Achikam ba'aretz v'ifkidot ito anashim v'nashim v'taf midat ha'aretz asher lo haglu Bavela. What did we find out? There are officers of the army who deserted, who left the city. They're in the field with their men. Some people stayed in Yerushalayim and fought. Yeah. Some went to the Babylonian side. Some units in the army left the city and hid out in the fields, either because what Yirmiyahu said or whatever it was. But the army people, a lot of army people deserted and went to the fields because they saw the writing on the wall. Okay. They come to Gedaliah, to Mitzvah. And who are some of the people? Yishmael ben Netanya, who's the bad guy. Yonatan and Yochanan ben Chireach, they're the good guys. And so ben Chum, etc. Basically, a whole bunch of, who are these guys? They're all army generals who abandoned the army and hid out in the fields during the bad part of the war. So Gedaliah knows these guys from before. Vayishav Gedaliah ben Achikam ben Shaphan l'Anashem lemor al tiru me'avot kasdim shvu ba'aretz v'ivdu et melech Bavel v'itav lachem. Don't worry, even though you're once army people, I'm protecting you. I have Babylonian protection. As long as you guys stay loyal to the Babylonians, I'm with you. My government's in Mitzvah. And any problem with the Kasdim, it'll come through me. I'll take care of the Babylonians. If they come you, just make a living. Remember, collect your basically work the fields. No more rebellions for sure. Just make a living and pay your taxes to the Babylonians. Now listen next. V'gam kol ha'Yehudim asher b'Moav u'vnei Ammon u've'Edom v'asher b'chol ha'arzot shamu ki natan ha'melech Bavel sherit liYehuda v'yivkir aleim et Gedaliah ben Achikam b'Shaphan. What do we see? Tons of people left this city when it was under siege. Where did they run away to? Some went to Jordan. Some went to Ammon, to Moab. Some went to Edom. Basically, they went to Transjordan. Sounds like Miguel Ruth, doesn't it? Things are bad in Judea. You run away to Jordan. America wasn't around yet. Okay? So they hear the good news and they come back. Etc. They came back under Babylonian rule for sure, just to make a living. Now, Yotam ben Kirach, right? And all the army people were with him. Okay? And then now there's a plot. I'll just tell you the plot in a minute. The king of Ammon, the king of Jordan, right, is happy that what? That Babylonians got rid of us. Got it? Now, but the Babylonians are going to stay here forever. Jordan wants to take over Israel. How's he going to do it? He's going to send somebody. He's going to pay off somebody. This guy, Yishmael ben Netanya. He's going to pay him off to assassinate Gedaliah. Now, the second one of the ex-officers who was hiding comes back and assassinates the Babylonian appointed governor. What will the Babylonians think? The Jews are rebelling again. And what are the Babylonians going to come and do? They come and finish off the job. So the plot in Jordan is doing, let's get one of these Jewish generals, pay him off, right? To knock off the Babylonian appointed governor, ben Chavan, which will cause the Babylonians to be angry. We'll see in a minute. And they'll finish the job off, and then we can take over Israel. That's the plot. And it works. We'll see, it almost works in a minute. Right. Now, Yonatan Bekerep tells Gedaliah, this guy's out to kill you, and he won't take Lashon Hara. That's the famous, he tells him, do you know that Balis, the king of Ammon, is paying Yishmael ben Netanya to kill you? And Yochanan ben Kareach tells him, let me do it. Just give me permission. I'll wipe him off, and no one will have to know about it. And Gedaliah says, no Lashon Hara. He was learning Chavetz Chaim, whatever it was. Yes, don't do this. Don't say such bad things about Yishmael. Of course, he doesn't listen, and sure enough, he gets assassinated. Now, and this is Tum Gedaliah in the 7th month. The story I hope you know. He gets assassinated, and they bury all these people in the oh my gosh, running out of time. Okay. Now, what's really cool is that all these people come and get killed left and right. So one of these pits where they throw all the dead bodies in was the same pit that Yishmael put all the dead bodies in, was the same anti-tank trench, pretty much, or anti-chariot trench, that Asa built against Baasha when there was a civil war between North and South, which was like 300 years earlier, but that's thematically important because this is the end of Beit Rishon, but it ends right where the split kingdom began, in the border trench, the border, like the Berlin Wall kind of thing between North and South, from the time of Asa and Baasha, which was like 300 years beforehand, in the beginning of the split kingdom. Okay. So then Yishmael takes everyone captive and brings them back. And then Yochanan ben Kareach hears about it, and he goes and catches him. Basically, Yochanan ben Kareach becomes the hero. Yochanan ben Kareach is a great guy, saves them. They get rid of Yishmael ben Netanya, and they bring the people back. Okay? And he runs away to Man, but basically Yochanan ben Kareach saves the day. Okay. Now, so then what happens? Yochanan ben Kareach and everyone who he saved from captivity that Yishmael had taken, they come and they move to Beit Lechem, right? They go farther south, and they stay in what gets called Gerut Kimam, which is near Beit Lechem, on the way down to Egypt. Okay, listen carefully. Bipnei Kasdim ki yaru bipneim. Why are they moving down to Egypt? What are they afraid of? As soon as the Babylonians hear that Gedaliah ben Achikam got assassinated by one of the ex-generals from the army who came back from the fields, they're going to come down and put down the rebellion. And therefore, the safest thing to do is run away to Egypt, because they're still safe, because Babel didn't take them over yet. So now, all these Yochanan ben Kareach is a good guy. He's the hero, but they have a rabbi. Let's check with the rabbi if it's okay to go. This is what they say, and this is the end of Yirmiyahu's career, pretty much. Okay. There was still a bit of hope there could be a remnant in Jerusalem or in Judea. Says, listen, we're your followers. We left the city. We took your advice. We're back here now. We're worried. ויגיד לנו השם אלוהיך, את הדרך אשר נלך בה ואת הדרך אשר נעשה. You tell us, what does God want us to do now? Do we stay in Israel or do we go down to Egypt? Right? ויאמר אליהם ירמיהו הנביא, שמעתי, I hear what you're saying, הנני מתפלל על השם עליכם כדבריכם, I'm going to pray to God, והיה כל דבר שיענה השם אתכם, אשר יגיד לכם לא אמנע מכם. I'll tell you everything, I'm going to turn to God. You guys are in a rough situation. Do we stay in Israel under the threat that maybe the Babylonians come and retaliate? Or do we go down to Egypt? And Yirmiyahu said, I'm going to ask God, I'll tell you what to do. Listen carefully. V'hem amro Yirmiyahu, Yeh Hashem aleinu, Yeh Hashem banu, le'ed bemet v'ne'eman, im lo k'chol davar asher yishlechacha Hashem alecha, eleinu ki naseh. Whatever you say in God's name, we're going to follow. Im tov im ra b'kol Hashem aleinu asher anu sholchim otcha elav, nishma, l'man asher yitav lanu, v'chi nishma b'kol Hashem aleinu. Rabbi, go to God, ask him the question, whatever he says, we're going to follow you. For good or bad, we trust you. You're a rabbi, okay? For some reason, it takes 10 days till he gets an answer, okay? And God tells Yirmiyahu to, what do you call it, to stay. Tell him the following, okay? If you stay in this land of Israel, I'll build you, you won't be destroyed. I'll plant you here. You guys can be the future. You guys can be here. Listen here. Don't worry about the Babylonians. I should tell you because you're afraid of them. Okay? You're worried about the Babylonians coming and taking revenge? Don't worry. God will protect you. Yirmiyahu's with you. He's the man. You can stay in your land. Okay? If you say we're going to leave this country, the more we want to go back to Egypt, okay? And there we won't see war, and we won't hear the shofar like blowing about war, and there won't be a problem with food, etc. And therefore God says, listen, if you go down to Egypt, you're finished. Okay? Then everything you're running away from is going to find you there. Okay, got it? He gives this whole thing about they should stay where they are. Okay? Okay? So basically he's telling them, stay in Israel, don't you dare go down to Egypt. And they promise to listen to him. Now listen, you see why. And these are Yirmiyahu's staunch followers. You follow? Listen. When after Yirmiyahu told the people what God said, listen carefully, and this tells you everything. These are the good guys, right? They don't believe Yirmiyahu. After all this, they call me Navi Sheker. You're lying. We don't believe you. Right? They wanted to head to go down to Egypt. Yirmiyahu didn't give it to them. They said, you're lying. They said, why? Who's paying you off? Everything I just told you is all here. Ki Baruch beneria mesitotcha banu lemantet otanu bi'ara kasdim lamit otanu lagotan bavela. Baruch beneria is behind all this thing. That's conspiracy theory. Who's being paid by the Babylonians? Baruch beneria, your scribe, and he's telling you to do all these things. Got it? And why? Because if we stay here, the Babylonians will kill us, and that's he's getting paid to tell you that. And they go down to Egypt. Got it? Listen, with Gedaliah and with Yirmiyahu, and they go down to Egypt. And they go to Panches. Okay? Okay. And then there's the Yirmiyahu gets to go back in Egypt already. You see what happened? Isn't that so sad, the end of his career? His staunchest followers, the people who follow him all the time, at the very end, they accuse him of being a Navi Shecher. They don't just trust him anymore because they're broken. Now, to make things worse, in Egypt, he doesn't give up. A rabbi's a rabbi. He's got to give a sermon. So in Egypt, act like the Egyptians do. Okay? What happens? In Egypt, he starts giving them Musar. Okay? So the word of God with Yirmiyahu was to all the Jews living in Mitzrayim. Okay? Look what happened, etc. Okay? But that's basically what I told you was going to happen, happened. Okay? You listen? No. But Hashem, you should have listened to me, you didn't. By now you should listen to me. Therefore God saying, Kol Hashem Litzvot Yisrael, Lama Atem Osim Rak Dola Nafshetchem Lachrit Lachem Ish Al V'Olav Yonek Why are you serving other gods in Egypt? Why are you following Egyptian culture? Stop it. Okay? Did you forget all the things that happened to you? Listen to me. Okay? Okay? And therefore, God says, if you stay in Egypt and follow their gods, I'm going to wipe you out over there. And you guys are finished. Okay? No. He goes on and tell how bad it's going to be. He gives them Musar now. You understand? He's giving them Musar now in Egypt. Listen what they say back to him. Pasuk Tedvav. Vayanu et Yirmiyahu. Kol nashim hayodim ki maktot nashem le'elohim acherim. All they answered Yirmiyahu, all the people whose wives are already, all the kosher culture already. Okay? Okay. Listen what they answer him saying. Hadavar asher dibarte eleinu b'shem Hashem einenu shomim elecha. In his face. They have total chutzpah. He goes, hey, Rabbi, what you're saying, we're not listening to you. We're not listening to God. We've had it. Why? Listen. Ki oson nased kol hadavar asher yasa mipinu leketer lemlechet hashmayim b'sech maschem. We're bahachis. We're following all these other gods. Right? Kasher asinu anachnu v'avotenu melachinu v'sareinu bari Yehuda b'chutzot Yerushalayim b'nizbalecha b'niyat tovim v'lo reinu. Right? Umin az chadavnu leketer lemlechet hashamayim b'sech lo nesachim chasanu kol b'chebra p'tamnu. כי אנחנו מקטרים למלאכת שמיים לעסק לנסחים, ובני אנשינו עשינו כל כבודים הציבה, בעסק לנסחים. What are they telling him? They're going back to Menachem. Remember how the book began with Yirmiyahu getting rid of all the avodah zarah of Menachem and its big religious reform? It says, under Menachem, life was great. Remember, the Assyrians were following. The Babylon didn't come in yet. When we were serving other gods under Menachem, things were great. Ever since you came with your religious reform, with Yoshia's reform, etc., everything fell apart. You crazy religious fanatics. You know what? We've had it with your religion. We're following Egypt. You keep quiet, Rabbi. We're not listening to you. And that's how he ends his career. And they're not even hiding anymore. They just had it with him. And they're saying life was better under Menachem when we're following other gods. Then don't tell us. You see how they view it? Everyone's got their narrative and from their side. Then Yirmiyahu goes and tells them it's gonna, it's what God's gonna take him, but he goes and tells them anyhow. Okay? He says, you guys are finished, and I'm gonna finish you off in Egypt. And that's what happens. Egypt's finished off. There's no sherit from Egypt. The future is going to be in Babel. That's the Tema Tovot from chapter 24. Anyway, so that's the sad ending of where Yirmiyahu wants to perish. The poor guy. You understand why you say he wants to die? It's so sad. He was right all along, and no one wanted to believe him. And what they say, everyone has what's called the understanding of things. And bottom line, they said, listen, you religious fanatics, life was better under Menachem. When we were following other gods, life was better. Now, it's a hard question. Remember, do we see that when Yirmiyahu said, we'll do this story next week when we get to Yechezkel as well, that the people are complaining, why are we being punished for the sins of Menachem? It's not fair. The Churban was promised because of their sin, and now we're paying the price of their sins. And Yirmiyahu says, no, you're being punished for what you did. We'll see it later in Yechezkel 18. But in a nutshell, God tells Yirmiyahu to publish, he publishes, etc. So we have his books for the future. Because God tells Yirmiyahu to publish because maybe generations later people might learn something from it. But his own generation didn't work. It's almost, remember all the parallels between Moshe Rabbeinu and Yirmiyahu with the 40 years and is being anointed, his things. So with his own generation, Moshe also failed. For future generations, he was Moshe becomes Moshe Rabbeinu. His own generation just didn't work, did it? Remember the Chetam Ravim, etc. But 40 years later, it's time for him to retire, and then finally they begin to listen. He has an impact on us for all generations. Same thing with Yirmiyahu, his own generation didn't appreciate him, hated him, thought he was wrong. But luckily, God, we canonized his books, and we could learn from them. Unfortunately, we don't. But that's a different story. So that was why Yirmiyahu wants to perish, and why God tells him to publish. But at the end of those last chapters, you understand why we have a fast day for Tum Gedalia? It wasn't just, the guy got killed. It says it typified what happened. And remember, the people listened to Yirmiyahu, ran away and came back. And the guy who was saving them from the guy in telling Yirmiyahu, we're listening, whatever you say, they don't listen to him already at the end. His career, he's had it. And the best thing, what they tell him back in Egypt, shut up, Rabbi. We're not listening to you. It's just so sad. Anyway, so that's our little Yirmiyahu ending.
Such a happy note.
Isn't it a shame that people don't learn this book? The book is so full of action. And again, my whole point.
People will still be convinced that they're right, so it doesn't matter.
You see, and the point I'm trying to explain is if you don't understand the politics behind Yirmiyahu's nevuah of the 70 years of giving into Bavel, that's the root of his career. Why they hate him and why he's accused of being why they want to kill him is all because of the political nature of his prophecy of giving to the Babylonians. And again, that doesn't mean that's always a message of God. That was for that generation. What he would say in different generations is something else. There's time for war and time for peace. But in his own generation, he gave a message no one wanted to hear him, and that caused false prophets. And that's when politics and religion clash. It was when people, make up prophecies where their motivation is political and not religious. That's when there's a danger. And therefore, that's I think that's an important message.
Question?
Yeah, sure.
Were they actually, does it say there that they were actually paying? They thought that the Babylonians were paying
That's what he said.
Yirmiyahu?
Baruch Benaria is being paid. It's getting you, and because to get the Kazim to come in, he's helping the Kazim. They said before, and they accused him. Remember, he's walking out of the city to go visit his family in Binyamin, and they say, hey, you're going to the enemy. They're accusing him of working for the enemy. That's the only explanation he can have for Zevulot. Why would he do it?
Yeah.
He's being paid by the European Union. There's foreign funding all these left-wing
Why
rabbis.
did he go to Egypt?
He needed a minion. He's gonna stay. He can't go to Babel. It's too late there. There's no one left in Israel. He's got to go. There always needs a minion. He can't leave his people. He's got to give his drasha. Remember, he gives it. They don't listen, but the rabbi's got to give the drasha. It's his pastime. It's in his blood. Okay, but what they tell him in Egypt, almost no one's aware of that story in the end, right? But in Egypt, when they tell him, he said, "We're going to listen to you." They don't listen, and when they tell him, no, we're serving other gods, and life was better under Menachem. That's like really harsh.
Wow.
Okay. Anyway, have a good week, and
Thank you
very much.
But,
a little bit.
Rabbi.
Okay.
Sure,
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Sure. Turn off the recording.